Welcome back to the channel, guys. This should be a good one. Thought a little bit about it for once. I'm going to start a new series called You're Not a Narcissist. I think it'll be helpful for those of us that have recently left relationships and, think that we're narcissistic. And that's a very typical situation. I'm going to try and make it into a series. And I think it'll be helpful for the viewer as well as myself. I can keep on actual structure for you guys for once and try and be, keep it more to the point of the title. I know I'm tangential, but I try and be, as authentic as possible. And I tend to be, anyway, here we go. Here I go. I'm going off, talking about going off. So this is the first episode ever. You're not a narcissist. I realize the acronym is probably better. You're not a narcissist. Episode 1. This episode is going to be You're Not the Narcissist. Insensitivity is not narcissism. That's going to be the topic of today's discussion. How insensitivity, essentially, your insensitivity can lead to a road of thinking that you're the narcissist. In other words, to be insensitive is not to be a narcissist, and often somebody, especially if you're the scapegoat in your family, your insensitivity, I would argue, is more or less a way to fit in, a way to shelter your empathy. It's almost like the other side, like feigned empathy with the narcissist can often manifest as like outwardly showing a lot of empathy. People see, a narcissist's big thing is their appearance, how they look to others. Everything inside is a mess. And anyway, so that feigned empathy, it's almost like the empath, which is kind of a loaded word. I don't like to use that word, but like the person codependent, let's say, scapegoat, is feigning insensitivity. Let me explain. So, again, you are not a narcissist if you have empathy. Anyone watching these videos, I put it at the high 90 percentile. If narcissism is 6% of the population, whatever, it's going up. Trait narcissism is going up in this country. There's no question. But pure NPD, uncurable NPD, is, I guess they say roughly 6%. So to me, and especially if you're looking into a video, I don't know how many people are watching this that are narcissists. So we can start with that. And insensitivity in most people, you can even argue with the narcissist. It's just a super concentrated insensitivity. And the insensitivity, I think, is a lack of vulnerability. It is a way to shelter oneself from harm. And often an individual that has had trauma, that can manifest as, well, it's hard to say with trauma. Let's just say that, let me back up. An individual who grows up in a household with ongoing trauma, i.e. normalized trauma, not, like CPTSD type stuff, like little things here and there, the conditioning of being the scapegoat, of being, one of those people, which is very typical, that have your nervous system hijacked in a state of fight or flight. And fawn, that's a big one. And although codependency and the other side of the coin, again, I've said in my other videos, the extreme side, opposite side of extreme psychopathy, narcissism, is a sacrificing of oneself. And that is not good either. That is the other side. That is, you have given up. You have given up all of your power and the fear to appease someone who's equally unhealthy, but in a way that manifests into, usually a lot more smoke and mirrors, a lot less truth seeking. And so For example, here's something that I've been thinking about a lot lately. Gabor Mate talks about this. On Rogan, he talked about what is ADD, and Gabor said, what do you do? I'm going to totally butcher this and paraphrase it, but hopefully get at least some of the point out, is that, what do you do when you can't run, or you can't run away and you can't be there? You have no choice, basically, right? You have to distract. You have to become distracted. You have to, and I think to some degree that's true. Like ADHD is very similar to CPTSD and trauma. People with ADHD, I feel like there's such a correlation. As to me, one of the most correlating mental health disorders that has the Venn diagram, like the middle similarities between CPTSD and ADHD, it has like the most similarities. So I'm backing up now. I'm not going to lose my train of thought. So ADHD, if that's true, to the degree that that's true, that you're distracting because of it is like a nervous system issue. I'm glad I can actually think of that word again. The nervous system has been hijacked since basically birth. I didn't realize it started very early in the womb. But you have this, and then usually manifests into a family that is a heightened awareness, a fight or flight. And we can get to the implications of that. I love talking about why that evolved, and they talk about hunter-gatherer, blah, blah, blah. But if we're just talking about right now narcissism and how you're not that narcissist, backing way up, ADHD, I'm reeling it back, ADHD, and let's say a drug like Adderall, which to me numbs the self. And I would say this is something I've just been going on and on, because I take Adderall. I'm on 20 milligrams right now, 2 cups of coffee, pretty good right now, for the record. But there's no question, anyone who's taken Adderall and is on stimulants for ADHD, there's no question that drug numbs the, I don't want to be as hyperbolic to say the humanity in oneself, but at the extremes, I think it can. It definitely numbs the sensitivity, though. So, having said that, insensitivity is not narcissism. Again, insensitivity in this instance is often, in other words, that insensitivity that, let's say, outwardly is projected with if we're just talking about Adderall, we're talking about cope, right? Because a drug is cope, a drug is to, I don't think it's as simple as a chemical imbalance. I don't agree with that. We're not that simple. And so it is a way of coping with the environment, your nervous system, both, right? And so that insensitivity, in that case, wouldn't that